Built in cast inside concrete. And what we do is take one of his buildings and turn it into a precast solution. This is a project that typically students do in small teams. And it's usually a 1 to 2 week project as a quick warm up. So what you're seeing here are some of the results of taking that existing building and turn it into a precast panel system. So students usually do a visit to one of the plants, and then they also consult with engineering. Our second project is the one on tessellations, in which the students take one single element that gets repeated multiple times, either through a form liner or a specific form that it's done at the plant, and then they do different kinds of designs with that single repetitive element. So what you're looking at here is one element that gets cast multiple times, and then the arrangements gets repeated in terms of creating new possible designs with this singular repetition. This project is usually individual, although there's been times that students do it in teams. And this project in particular has been sort of a signature of our program as well. So students actually do this in casting in their own desktops machines, and they do programming with computers, but they also do fabrication with a laser cutter or a 3D printer. We also do a visit to a plant where we fabricate a large-scale panel, and this could be done either right after the work with Tadeo Undoh or after the work on the tessellations. Our two partners, Metromont Corporation and Tilda Corporation, very generous in welcoming us and the students to actually has been doing over the last few years. We have done specifically work with one particular theme, which I will explain in a moment. But in the fall of 2013, we started this as a small really a fun.
We're losing your voice there, Carlos.
Pilot studio. It wasn't a funded studio at that time, but we did it. All right, can you hear me? Okay, I will assume yes. We did a high-rise studio, and in fall of 2015, we did a airport terminal at Greenville Airport. So the project was a new terminal as an expansion of the existing terminal. Starting in the fall of 2016, we actually been working in collaboration with the State Department Overseas Building Operations and the Office of KCCT in Washington, D.C. For this first year, we did a project on the Australian Embassy, and this has become the signature project of the studio. In the fall of 2017, we did a consulate in Rio de Janeiro, and as well, it was with the same architecture firms of KCCT in Washington, D.C., and the Bureau of Overseas Building Operations, which is the architecture office of the State Department.
Seems like we've lost you again, Carlos. Is everyone else lost, Carlos?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Audio keeps coming in and out.
Yep, hear you now.
But you haven't missed anything. Once I saw it was out, I became quiet. I just wanted to basically highlight the major benchmarks that we have accomplished over this year, and I think this to me is sort of the most one of the most important highlights of our presentation. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So we have conducted a total of 7 studios in which we have exposed 94 architecture students and 19 civil engineering students, both together working in these projects. We have also integrated a lot of these into the structured courses that I teach, in which more than 560 students have actually come through these classes, both undergraduate and graduate architecture and civil engineering students. We have regular attendance and poster presentations in the last 6 editions of the PCI National Convention, where students have come
Lost you again. Carlos, we've lost you again.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay,
Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up, Peter.
yes,
Okay, what was the last thing you heard?
the conventions.
Okay. Visits to Tyndall and Metromont plants, in which the students get first-hand learning about fabricating a panel. We also frequently visit construction sites that both Tyndall and Metromont have actually built in our area. We started also workshops with associate producers, and in particular with Ray and US Form Liners. Comes every semester to come and do a workshop of their products that students work with. We've also built a strong PCI Studio alumni network, and this is important because several of them have reached out to Peter to do box lunches in the respective offices where they're currently working. And we have them also come back to our reviews every time we have a final review in studio. We also hosted in 2015 the meeting of the PCI Foundation Board at Clemson University, which was really great for the students, to sort of the larger partners. We have a strong presence in PCI media through the Ascent magazine, as well as the PCI Foundation review. So constantly being in support of their work, and vice versa, they're supporting. We have a strong participation in particularly PCI committees and attendance at PCI committee days, particularly the R&D Council. I recently became a member of the committee, and also attending the education committee. Attending the education committee, my part of the R&D Council active participant. Through our work also, we have able to do a few student Jenny fellowships, and particularly in the civil engineering department. I am aware of at least 2, maybe 3 students that have received Jenny fellowships. In addition to 2 of our students participating in the 2 editions of Project Precast, one of them being a winner 2 years ago in Tennessee, I believe it was, no, Kentucky, sorry, Louisville. We build a strong relations with professionals, and particularly some of our local firms of LS3P and Craig Golding and Davis, as well as multinational international firms like Skidmore, Owens & Merrill, Arrow, KCCT, and of course the Bureau of Overseas Building Operations, OBO, from the State Department. Some of the work that we did started serve as a seed to us achieving a major grant with the National Science Foundation, which is currently being worked. And we're working this in collaboration with 2 professors from the University at Buffalo. One of them actually, Pinar Okumish, who is also an active participant of PCI and the Civil Engineering Department at Buffalo. And I think the one that I like to highlight the most is this strong collaboration with other programs in the region. We have built incredible bonds with NC State, Georgia.
Just lost you again. Carlos, just lost you again. Carlos?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, audio, I don't know for what reasons going in and out.
Yeah. And we lost your image, so.
Yeah, I just turned it off. That was the last slide.
Okay.
I'm open for questions. Okay, guess no questions. Unless someone spoke and I didn't hear it.
Yeah, we do want to try to be interactive here, so this is the opportunity for some questions. With your losing the audio, it's a little bit more difficult. But would you hand the screen back to me?
I did. Oh, I'm wondering if I did this the right way.
I'm not able to take it back yet.
Do you have control, Peter?
I don't believe so.
So in the meantime, I have a question about, you've talked about the other grants and things that you've gotten. Do you have any advice for anybody on how to kind of take your foundation grant and kind of get other benefits besides the grant from it, kind of expand what you're doing with it beyond the university? I think you've done a really good job with making contacts outside of the industry and forming those other relationships and getting the grants and becoming involved in PCI. Do you have any advice for the other, especially for some of the newer professors, on how to get the most out of the grant that way?
Yes, I have in, I guess the biggest thing would be to be open to opportunities of how to expand the sort of ideas that start there. The work that we did on tessellation is one that I've been for the longest time interested in developing sort of as a standalone, and we saw an opportunity to create some initial ideas that could be carried into a sort of a full-fledged proposal. What we did at Clemson, Brandon and I, was to actually, we applied for an internal grant that would allow us to create seed material in order to demonstrate the feasibility of our ideas. So we started with ideas in the studio. We created a small research group from one of the students that had taken structures. He didn't take the studio, but he took structures. And one of Brandon's students who had taken his concrete class, high performance concrete class. We spent about a year basically creating basic or fundamental information as in respect to building up enough evidence that will create enough interest for our grant. And then we also look up for partners outside our university. So Pinar came very instrumental as she has an expertise on final element analysis, and which we lacked at Clemson, at least between Brandon and myself. And this contact with Pinar came also through our relations with the PCI program. So those two things, using the first seed ideas we started in the studio, and then using the network that we have built through PCI, I think it proved instrumental in moving ahead. We have, like I said, the advantage of starting with a seed grant internally and then going after major grants outside. So that was pretty much sort of in a nutshell what we did over a period of 2 or 3 years. So this was sort of a small build up step by step.
And I'd just like to note with Pinar, she actually came out of the University of Wisconsin when I was with
Right.
Illinois and Wisconsin. And so the first time we had a poster session at the PCI, she came to the poster session, and that's actually how she started making her contacts within the precast industry and kind of building her relationships. So that poster session has become a really important part of relationship building for the students that you have as well.
That's correct. I would say as an extension to that, Pinar brought one of her colleagues who had started at the university at the time, Negar, and she was not part of the PCI family yet, but now she's been introduced through by working with us in this grant.
So Carlos, I think your voice had dropped off when you were talking about your collaboration with the other studios, and I'm not sure if you had mentioned it or not, but I know that you've participated in design reviews at both NC State and Georgia Tech, and I think there's a value in that. And we've had some other professors from outside the region also participating in some of these design reviews.
That's correct. I think the thing that you probably miss is that I was so glad to have colleagues from my region literally on speed dial for any matters related to academic development, and in particular related to PCI. And that's why we were able to, in a quick short time, put this seminar together. And it's why I say that this is perhaps one of the most valuable outcomes that I've had out of this experience. I hope you guys heard all of that.
Yeah, we did hear that this time.
Okay.
Been in and out a little bit during the presentation. I think from my perspective, one of the real niceties that you do in the studio is the Tadeo Undoh exercise, which when you started, it was like a 2-week exercise or 2 or 3 week. It's whittled down to probably a 1-week exercise. But the very first day of class, You've had me come in and do a lecture, and either prior to or after my lecture, you send the students to the library to pull up Tadeo Undoh books and choose a project. And so prior to knowing too much about precast or having to actually design a building, they're taking an existing cast in place building and without changing program or materials or aesthetics, just convert that. And so it's a very quick exercise, but really gets the students hands-on with understanding a little bit more about precast. And during that week, they do a plant tour at either Metromont or Tyndall, and actually sit down with some of the sales engineers with pretty rough models at that point of that Tadeo Undoh project. So they start to learn that maybe panel sizes may be too large, or they can't span across an opening, or some other issues. And so they really get hands-on very quickly. And I think that's one thing I've really thought was innovative for getting them quickly into the projects.
That's correct.
And I know from the hands-on perspective, since others aren't talking, I'll try to get some other people talking, but I know from a hands-on perspective, US Formliners workshops and Ray's contributions for all of our studios has been extremely valuable. And I've always been amazed at how much the students really appreciate that hands-on aspect.
We love you, Ray.
Thank you. I'm embarrassed now. I did have a question, Carlos. We've got Jeffrey on, and I don't know if Liz is on yet or not, but as our newest studio here in the South, and perhaps you've already talked to them when they were in with us in Fort Worth, but what one recommendation might you make to Jeffrey and Liz at Kennesaw State to have the first kind of year or first semester as successful as possible?
Well, I think for any kind of exploratory work, it took us two things. One, a little bit long time to actually come up with a project that was challenging but at the same time interesting for students. These are high upperclassmen and also a mixture of graduate students. While you're learning not only a new material, but a new technique and a new construction system, to try to be creative, but at the same time challenging, this is what took me a little bit while to come up with the right scale and appropriate program. I think the support with the industry was paramount, both in PCI, but also the professionals in terms of developing our program. And the other thing is, fail early and fail a lot. And we certainly did. When you're doing these kinds of explorations, sort of all options are at the table, but you want to go through them rather quickly and learn from other mistakes. I'll be happy to share with them any kind of the things that we have learned over these years and how we come in. One thing that is important is that every program is very unique. Greg and Dana took the experiment that we did with panel
Getting some feedback from someone there if they'd mute.
I think it's Liz.
Okay.
Yeah, Liz has joined us mobile until she gets onto her computer, so.
I think learning also from your peers would be very important, but by all means, the exercises that we have created at Clemson have worked for us, but they may or may not work for you. I'm always tell my colleagues, feel free to take anything and make it better, and if you make it better, great. And if it works for you, excellent. They, like I was mentioning, both Dana and Greg took some of the things that we had done in fabricating the panels, that they have created something very unique on their own as well, sort of raising the bar. So we learn from each other, and this is the value of these kinds of encounters.
So I would just add to Carlos, I think one thing is, what do you want to get out of this? I think there are lots of different ways to structure this program and lots of different questions that can serve the students, that can serve the schools at large, which can make the connections back to industry. And so I think it's really important to have a kind of a specific goal in terms of how you want the program to be oriented. And if I were just to sort of add one thing to that, I think what we talk about failing often and in large amounts. I think the one thing that we would have done better is had stronger, earlier connections to our local producers. I think that was one of our mistakes.
That's something we hear again and again from schools, that early connection, getting the producer into the classroom as early as possible, and actually getting them in before the semester starts to talk about how you want to approach the semester and where you want to actually slot them in during the curriculum is very helpful. And this is all the reason why we like to look at these grants as multi-year grants, not as a 1 year, one and done, because you kind of expect people to learn and grow as they do 1 year at a time and learn from what they did the previous year.
And I've noticed we have all of our primary producer partners online with us now, between Gate, Metromont, and Tyndall. So this is good feedback for them as well. At this point, we're right on time, so I'm gonna try to switch this over at this point. Thank you, Carlos. By the way, if you look at Carlos's picture there, you know who that is right in the middle there? We got Petey.
We have Petey, that's correct.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to try, see how successful I am. Am I going to hand off to Greg or Dana for?
It'll be me.
Okay.
Dana. Yep.
Let me see if I'm making you the presenter.
Sure. Here we go.
You can grab it.